tried to zoom in and I couldn't zoom in.
Oh,
Jim
really?
is an invalid number.
Well, Gloria's here, so. Just.
Gloria is Gloria.
Hutchinson.
Okay, I want to make sure if there was another Gloria around. Hi, Gloria.
Sorry, it took me a while to unmute. Hi.
David says it's Gloria, so it's got to be. There's only one, right? All right. I think we can do this. I didn't hear from Scott, but I guess he's enjoying his life. That's good. And I didn't hear from Huntley.
You did or you didn't?
Didn't. Dick is Moosehead Lake.
Oh, good.
So he's enjoying, and he said coverage there, cell phone coverage isn't so good. And I said, you're going to want to call in for Moosehead Lake? I don't think so.
Where is that?
Amazing.
Yeah, where is it?
Way north.
Way north.
Yeah,
Way north?
Yeah.
Way north.
It's
You
north
get
of
to-
here.
You
It's
can
north.
get to Canada before you get to Moosehead.
No, not quite.
Almost, yeah.
From
Well,
here.
That's one of the ways of getting there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's call this guy to order. A little bit of a roll call here, make sure we have everybody, and we're gonna have a public hearing, so we'll kind of mesh that together, so we can do that.
David?
Chris?
Sarah?
Jim?
Jim, you're going to be a voting member tonight.
All right,
Excellent.
I'm nervous.
Kathy?
Steve.
Bill.
Steve, hi there.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
That guy over there. He's the public, but he's professional public.
Oh, yeah.
All righty.
There you go.
We have to, we'll get started on the, just the regular approving minutes from last meeting, then we'll commence with the public hearing. Do I have a motion to approve minutes? I have a motion?
Second?
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any public comment? Scratch that. We're almost making our time here.
That's right.
Here we go. Public hearing. We introduced the planning board members. So we did that already. We got that little check mark next to that. We did voting member determination. Jim is going to be voting. He's an alternate, but tonight he's a full-fledged member voting. Since we don't have a lot of folks seated here, it's very simple. We would like you to present, please, and address your comments to the board,
Okay,
and we'll be happy to respond.
that sounds great.
Come on up.
And I think I'm gonna drop the plans off,
Yep.
so you have everything you need there. By the way, I'm Steve Heiliger, land surveyor. I'm
Okay.
representing
Well,
Gloria and Thomas Hutchins. I believe we zoomed during all the craziness last fall at one point. My line. So essentially what this this is kind of the final phase that the Hutchins had in mind when they did the initial boundary line adjustment between themselves and the Cossachins last fall.
I feel like we've been here before.
You have been here before, sir.
That's
You're
right. We have room for everything.
Just about, yeah.
So think kind of what explains it best would be the land exchange detail on the left. If you look at, the major inset here, the adjustment that we did last year basically took the piece of land from the Cossetrans and we brought it over to the Hutchins HTG. During the survey, I was retracing Thaddeus Thorne, and it was found that the Rangusis's house was quite close to the lot line and actually non-conforming as far as the setbacks were concerned. This in mind, the Rangusises and Tom and Gloria got together and kind of came up with a solution that would attempt to make these lots that are actually non-conforming more or less non-conforming by eliminating, there are 3 lots involved, as you can see, 40, 41, and 42. 41, is the small lot out of the road that was part of the Rangusis property. It's still essentially 2 lots on their deed. There was never a merger done. And so what they're proposing is to eliminate, if you look at the detail, lot 41 altogether. And a portion of lot 41 is going to go to both the Rangusises and the Hutchins. And then in turn, the Hutchins are going to give the Rangusises a portion of their lot to make it more conforming as far as the setbacks are concerned. Because in the future, they would like to put some kind of a, bump out off to the south and try and expand their camp a little. I know there seems to be a lot going on there, but
Okay, so this is the present line?
this is the present line.
Well, this one is the present.
Correct. These dash lines are here.
Okay,
Okay, this would be this lot and this lot, both belong to the Rangusises. This lot is the Hutchins lot.
okay,
So they're proposing to eliminate this lot, and land from this lot will go to both the Hutchins and the Rangusises. And the Hutchins is going to swap some land, essentially, bring it further south. This would be the current property line. See how close it is to the house.
Yeah.
By moving it here, it now moves the setback there, and it actually would give them enough room to put a little bump out or whatever they needed. And as far as conforming within the setbacks, it removes the Rangusis' house from being non-conforming.
and these 2 lots, is this 2 lots or is it just, this is 1 lot?
Correct, that's one lot.
That's 1 lot right now, okay.
So 40 and 42 would stay, 41 just disappear.
Yes. The other thing in mind with all of this too was it would give Tom and Gloria more frontage on the road to work with as well.
Right.
What is
Which would be
the,
how much?
what is the frontage on this? See that there?
Okay, I believe I have minimum road 2 feet. Lot R48, note 6, has 75 feet of frontage.
48? 40?
Excuse me. Lot R840 has 75 feet of frontage. Sorry. R841 has 83 feet of frontage, and R842 had 75 feet of frontage.
So this will give,
Post-adjustment, frontage will be 110.33 for lot 42, which is the Hutchins, and 124.74 for lot 40.
So again, we're looking at the adjustment of 2 non-conforming lots or even 3 non-conforming lots.
Absolutely correct, sir.
Into 2 non-conforming lots.
Yes, sir, absolutely correct. My hope was, and our hope was that the 2 lots remaining would be less non-conforming than the 3 lots that are existing there right now.
And like you said, RA 40, that line, the current lot line is like right behind the house.
Oh, it's right behind the house, yeah. And I was going from one of Thad's plans that he had done for cost, trying to involve a piece across the stream that was involved in the last time.
Okay. Questions? I didn't know, we need to go through
Again?
We need to go through a checklist?
Yes, we do.
Questions, comments? Concerns?
So, these are camps rather than permanent houses, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But, yeah, summer residential.
And the whole purpose of this is so they can maybe make some add-ons and,
Correct. Now, Thomas and Gloria actually have a approved septic for their lot at this point. And, you know, the Rangooses, it's kind of a small camp, and they wouldn't mind putting something off to the south a little, which would give them the room without encroaching, you know, on the setback. It would still leave plenty of room for Thomas and Gloria with their plans.
one thing I'm missing, the lot that's disappearing, who owns that?
Rangooses.
Okay.
They have 2 lots associated with their deed. They never merged them officially. You know what I mean? They've always been separate lots.
Okay.
So is there a minimum frontage on Carter Dutch Road that has to be maintained?
Well,
200
it's
feet.
noted as 200 feet. Neither of these lots met that
Not
in the
even
first
close,
place.
yeah, right.
No, they were, no, you're right, sir.
But they're existing lots. So they're non-conforming lots.
Yeah.
Anybody have any issue with the non-conforming lots and the frontages on these? My sense is that our policy has always been to, when we're dealing with non-conforming lots, any detriment to the lot would be a negative, and we might not look at it favorably, but any improvement is an improvement.
Exactly, you
Yeah.
know, it's, right.
It's something less,
Less non-conforming is the only way, or more or less non-conforming.
that's been our general.
So were these lots plotted out before the conforming rules put in?
Yes.
And when was that? Do we know?
60,
Before we had a planning board.
Okay.
Before Sarah.
Yeah.
or 60. All right.
Sorry. Anything before Sarah is like ancient.
Oh,
Ancient history. She's been doing this.
dated, you're getting dated.
Yeah.
She is a resident historian.
Oh, that's awesome.
Lived through most of it.
You're up by the Eagle House?
Next door.
Oh, yeah. Spent a lot of time up there over the last, my son's been a Nordic racer since 7th grade.
It is a
You can tell.
phenomenal stop.
Oh, he's out at
On the north.
the Olympic Training Center in
Yeah.
Park City right now.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
He's with St. Michael's.
Yeah, there was an NCAA meet a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, I'm the one with doing all the cooking. I know.
Yeah, and
That's where he looks from.
one morning was a 30-kilometer race, and the ambient temperature was like 5 degrees. And we went down there, there was a wind, you know.
Oh, of course.
We came to this guy who had this thin shell, you know,
Yeah.
and he was from the University of Montana or one of those places. And I said, "You're going to freeze out there." And in this thick Russian accent, he said, "Too cold, better than too hot."
He's right, though. We're racing.
Yeah, yeah. He had a mask.
Yeah.
He showed me a mask that he put on.
My son trains with the UVM kids,
Ah,
and they're all from Norway and Sweden.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Recording stopped.
Oh,
But it's
Recording in
impressive.
progress.
oh,
It's impressive.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
all right.
And they're so fast.
I don't know how. He was fortunate, you know, to get on the
Start
field when he
when
was
he
in
was young.
7th grade.
Uh-huh.
Right, and so at this point, it's being 6'2", and
Yeah. Well, my school doesn't, I work with the University of Michigan.
no.
We don't have a Nordic team. It's a Nordic club team, but not a varsity.
That's like at UNH when I rowed, as a rower, we had a club team that wasn't recognized as
Yeah,
a varsity sport.
I
Yeah.
mean, we have 960 student athletes and, you know, it's 26 sports. But
A huge school.
yes,
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
thank you for your presentation.
Okay, we're going to go through the checklist that hasn't been signed, okay? First part of the checklist is all appropriate. Application is signed, butters list was provided. Application fees were paid, 5 copies, line adjustment and 1 here. So the first one is title box identifying title for proposed lot line adjustment plot showing town and plate.
Yep.
E911 address for proposed lot if available. Is that the line?
Is there an address on Carter Notch for this?
It's still referred to as Lot 42, I
There's no
believe.
resident.
There's no structure there.
So none have been established at this point.
Right. So that would be,
Maybe we need to talk to somebody in the town office about how they do that. Do you know anybody who would be able to help us on that?
yeah,
The clerk should be able to.
yeah, I can talk to them.
Yeah.
Maybe Gloria? Gloria, you need to get some action here and get yourself an address.
Heard you.
They're okay. I mean, you know somebody.
Get yourself an address, okay.
Get yourself an address, will you?
Tax map and lot number of the lots involved in the lot line adjustment.
Yep.
Ownership chart, printed the names of all the owners for each lot before the adjustment happens.
Yep.
Butters names, tax map, and lot numbers matching the separate butters list. I didn't check the list. That is correct.
Okay.
Butters name, okay. Name of zoning districts where lots will be adjusted and located.
Yeah.
Yes.
Minimum zoning frontage requirement.
No.
Do I say no or do I say no?
I think the right answer is that it's,
Grandfather?
well, non-conforming. Put NC, not NA.
Would that be down here? We can talk about this. Approved with conditions, that it's non-conforming.
I guess we would have to identify that, yeah.
Okay. Plot scale 1 inch equals 100 feet or better.
So he says, yeah.
North arrow. Location map clearly showing centered site locations and adjacent named roads.
Yep. All one of them.
Name, license number, address, seal, and signature of surveyor.
Yeah.
It's not signed down here yet.
My side.
Once you,
Oh, is that us?
I can't.
is my stamp off? to
Oh,
the-
yeah, your stamp is there, I'm sorry.
It should be off to the right lower corner.
Yeah, I think there's a stamp there, I just can't, my
No, there's
eyes
no.
are bad.
There's no.
No, but his signature should be over there in the far corner.
I believe it's
Yeah.
here.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It just says, this thing here says certified surveyor. What is that? Says the surveyor.
Yeah,
I
that's,
need to sign and date
yeah,
that?
you need to date and sign that. We'll
Yep.
need another signature.
Yep, no problem.
Okay,
So I kind of was.
I think we can get that. We'll hang around for a few moments. Or we can give them to you right after we finish here, then we get other business and we'll be good. You don't have to hang out.
So that's the surveyor's certificate that he has to sign. Okay, name and address and seal, name, address, and seal of engineer on all engineering sheets.
Yeah, that's,
And
No engineer.
Boundary survey including bearings and distances for all lot lines current and proposed, show entry. Show entire parcel being adjusted with current lot numbering.
yep.
Yes?
40 and 42 shown.
And then 41 is disappearing.
And it's so noted to be eliminated.
All zoning ordinance setback lines, building setback in year-round streams. Soils, minimum lot size chart demonstrating that each proposed lot meets zoning minimum lot size requirements based on section 6 of the zoning requirements.
Lower left chart.
Okay. Existing buildings and other human-made objects remaining. I think there's only one building.
Two.
And there was just as a note, there was a shed on 43 that was just slightly over the south line.
Deed restrictions, if any. Copy of deed and statement indicating no knowledge of deed restrictions may be submitted.
There were no deed restrictions other than both those lots were subject to that 25, the widening of Carter Marsh Road. And I believe I mentioned that.
it's note 7.
We good? Okay. Location of existing and proposed water supplies, water wells within 200 feet of the involved lots. Show protective radii for all these water well streams. Location of existing and proposed sewers and septic systems within 200 feet of involved lots.
That's well, that's
Leach
30.
Yeah.
fields.
I could observe no well or leach field on R843, but what I did observe was a 1-inch plastic pipe running from the camp to the river.
43?
Yeah, we had that discussion last month, I think, that exists on some properties today.
Yeah.
But if you said it's 43, that's not involved.
Right,
Right.
it's an abutter, and,
Right.
I just wanted to be sure that there was no well there that was within the 75-foot radius.
Right, and the requirement is, if there is one, to have it noticed. And he's basically said no well or lease field observed.
Yeah, and you also required during the last boundary line adjustment, I remember we had to come back to you because you wanted that specifically put on that plan.
Yep.
That all they involved, signed a well release.
Location and names of all existing streets. Street.
Two streets.
Floodplain land, if applicable, clearly marketed, include phase floods, elevation, data, floodway, flood hazards.
Not applicable.
Okay. That is it. So we are approving, accepting the application.
So move to accept the application.
Yeah, with the noted condition that it's non-conforming for so we have to vote to, how is it, we have to do two things, right? We have to first accept the application, and we have to approve the application, is that correct?
I move to accept it.
Second.
Give our secretary a chance to note who
You accept it.
second. She's about the same time.
And then we approve.
And we have to vote. We vote to accept.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, approval. Do I have a
Motion to.
motion to approve? Jim wants to get in on the action.
Yeah. I mean,
Do I have a second?
Sure.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, go ahead, she got me. She beat me.
Quicker to the draw. All right, we have a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're good. I don't think we have any other business before the hearing, and therefore I declare the hearing closed. We do need signatures.
Thank you.
Which I'll save you a trip.
That's, appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the way it is. Save the trip's good.
Oh, yeah. Especially with gas, huh?
All righty.
Good.
That sounds good. I did. You're busy. I know you did. All right. Solar ordinance draft review. I don't know if you guys spent time looking at this document. I refreshed my review of it again this morning. Looks like we have a few decisions to make around what we would like it to do. But a lot of the language and the necessary features are here, if I'm reading it correctly. And please, either of you guys have already, Sarah and Dave, you've already been spending some time with this. But my sense is that we have to decide what we want to allow and not allow, which I think here has been handled by a table. Whether or not we wish to have any of the provisions that are here set apply, such as setbacks or things like having appropriate buffers, and that sort of thing. My sense of this is that this is a one-size-fits-all, so it pretty much hits everything. So I guess the question is, do we also want to address everything, or just some things that we prefer not to include?
That was my question. When I started reading this and looking at this, and we had a little brief discussion last time about, this talks about all types of areas within the community. We don't have all of those. So some we can just exclude
Well, that's the question, do we really not have some of these things?
Industrial, you don't have, the only, if you look at the chart, which is on
Yeah, before.
4, we don't have industrial, we don't have commercial, residential, agricultural, and rural residential. And those are, remember really split hairs on that.
What is the town considered? What is this area?
This is the village district,
So that would be in the first
right.
village, okay.
We have village district and then the rural residential district.
And those would be the three that I saw. Those are the two I saw that we did.
Yeah, those are the only, and then we have, overlay map is the conservation.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your time.
See you next winter.
Okay.
What would 16 be?
Okay, 16. Refresh your memory.
Wildcat gas station,
They're all
just around the village.
village district. Means that land within 500 feet on either side of the traveled center line of public Route 16 and 16A, and all other land between said routes in the town of Jackson, as shown on the official zoning map, which is the last page here.
Okay, so we only really would have the village, high density, and rural residential.
Right.
Right, and that's looking at the going across, but I was also trying to take a look at this regarding the categories going down. Is it possible that all of these would be a potential in our environment, or are some of these outside of that, or should we just include them anyways?
I don't see where they would do.
Well, I understand that, but somebody is creative, might.
You want them to cut down, what, 15 acres of trees?
Yeah,
Well, we had talked last month, you know, there are some people that have, like the Dean, like the Davis
Mhm.
property up on Black Mountain.
Mhm.
They could fill that entire property with solar panels. acreage. That would be classified as a large commercial school.
Mhm.
So, to your point, do we put them all just to cover ourselves?
yeah.
Or you don't have it in there so that it doesn't happen here, which is what happened with Lovell. Somebody came in and proposed, and they were caught short because they didn't have any ordinance that specifically for solar.
I would just as soon leave all the categories in and just have the X's marking as not as prohibited. And that would take that kind of concern out of the
Well, you can,
decision.
you wouldn't. I think the reason they put the chart in there is so that it's very easy to see the different zoning districts, and that's what they recommended. What you can do is state, it has size, the maximum size of a solar installation can be, let's see, 5 acres.
Where do you see that?
No, you have the definitions of
On page 2.
page 2 and page 3. You've got the definitions. of these different categories. Residential solar, community solar, and it's, okay, so residential is 500 square feet, 10 kilowatts. Community is 1 acre, 100 kilowatts. Accessory solar, agricultural solar, and primary agricultural solar. They don't have any suggested size for accessory agriculture.
The definition, because that was the other thing I assumed you would do to keep these definitions in here, is when they talk about 6 under accessory, it's really, it's meant to do under the freedom of existing agricultural use. So it's almost like residential, but for agriculture, that it's only for their purposes. It's only for their use.
Somehow you'd have to get that language into,
It's footnote 6 is
yeah.
the definitions.
That's just giving suggestions, so you'd have to word it to get that in. If they're being treated the same as residential solar, you could add that as part of rural resident, that, say that this includes agriculture, as long as it still uses agriculture, so that it's just an accessory.
So we could simplify a little bit then.
Oh, yeah.
Is that's the suggestion? I'm okay with that as long as the simplification doesn't create some exposure. And that way we can eliminate some of these things that have typos in them. 'Cause we don't need 50 aces, do we?
I didn't type this, so,
I didn't say you did I?
so it's good to know that other people do.
Yeah, I think you should know that. 50, there are 50 aces, and it's in there twice. It's the aces deal is in there
Oh, aces is first base. Gotcha. So I would say that if you don't want a solar array that is more than 5 acres, you could just make that solar array, that's the maximum size that you can have.
So what you're, and it's interesting, those are the 3 I put question marks down after that. The large commercial, which is greater than 5 acres, and then the industrial is up to 50 acres. And I was trying to figure out where you could get 50 acres to do anything on this property.
Well, there's a few.
We have a couple of landlocked lots.
We have
Yep.
local land.
They're 400 acres, 250 acres, 300 acres, and they're forested currently. And someone would come in with a chainsaw and say, it's landlocked, I decided I want to cut into that and make it a wonderful
And then
glowing.
they would have to get easements,
But-
driveway easements to get up there, and their neighbors would have to agree.
Wouldn't they have to be commercial though to do that? If it's residential, they can't do that anyway, can they?
It's in the rural residential,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
in the rural residential district.
As long as we limit, I mean, if you had all these opportunities and said, yeah, that's a possibility, but no one's got it, then we would have some potential exposure.
Yeah.
Someone could figure it out. And by just not having it available, period, no one's going to say, oh, well, I have 200 acres, I can do this. And push for it, get a special exception, go to the state legislature and get somebody to agree that, well, they don't prohibit it in the local ordinance, so, but I need to have this special exception because it's for solar, it's for green, and someone's gonna say, yeah, that's great. That happens, things like that happen.
So close it off and make them ask for an exception.
Yeah, make it harder to make exceptions,
It's my opinion.
unless we really want that sort of thing.
But I would think if, well, I just think of a property in Bartlett that was both residential and industrial. And I had it listed, and I actually had a solar guy come up, 50 acres.
Yep.
And he wanted to put a solar farm on there. He decided not to, but it was actually perfect because you couldn't see it from the road.
Yep. Yep.
So I had no objection to that.
Well, yeah, and the other point is just, future thing. Does the town want to at some point generate their own power? Using existing property, and that sounds foreign right now, because we, have power lines and the like, but, that are in place and generated by an outside organization, but at some point, someone might think of doing something like that, and I think if that is the case, it should be special, it should be something outside of this, and it's a real future thing.
I mean, you raised an interesting question, is if I wanted to, if I own, say, 200 acres, I didn't want to make it a commercial where I'm going to sell it, but I wanted to take it for all my neighbors. I'm not
Community.
selling it, but I could still, it's not a commercial use. Could you still do it in a rural residential area?
All about, that's community solar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting community. I saw community, and maybe I can try to see if I can find a definition. I thought community as the town would do it.
Yep.
On behalf of the town would do it versus,
Yeah, as
I'm just
opposed
doing it
to
for
your-
my neighbors.
Your neighbors,
But I'm doing it on more than 1 acre. And community kind of is a 1 acre.
Well, we don't have to necessarily keep these titles.
Right. Yeah, if I'm hearing Sarah correctly, is to simplify this, keep it as simple as possible, and put limits on it. And then anything that's outside of this box, then it's not a possibility unless someone goes outside of the regs, and that would require someone having to battle to get there. If our intention is to limit to within these standards, then we should do that. And probably 50 years out, somebody will look at and say, look, people who were what were they thinking? Solar farms are regular things. Everybody's got one of those, and every town has their own solar farm and all that good stuff. The other thing that I look at and try to think through is that the solar collectors we have now are likely going to be antiquated in 10, 20 years.
For sure.
And of course, when you go to buy one of these things, they tell you you're going to have to recycle them after 15 years or whatever. And I didn't see anything in here about recycling, but which I would like to address. But the other thing is that the sizes of what we allow or disallow are based on current standards. And so I think the other thing that kind of has to be in the back of the mind of maybe not me and this, most of the folks who are sitting in this room. Most of the folks. That guy may have to worry about is that, gee, they wrote these things with the idea that one solar panel only collects this much, and we get 10 times more than that. These are limited. And so this, again, it's based on current standards, and I think that that's okay.
And remember, zoning ordinances can be amended.
That's right.
So as times
Good
change,
point. Yeah.
as times change,
Yeah.
then
But duly noted, for the record.
So I'll also make a note of disposal.
yeah, I just did, at the
There is
very,
nothing.
very end. It says, abandonment is the very last one, on page 11. Solar collection systems shall be deemed to be abandoned if operations are discontinued for more than 6 months without written consent of the municipality, such as for reasons beyond the control of the owner operator. An abandoned system shall be removed and the site restored within 6 months of abandonment, and the solar panels be recycled.
But is there a state regulation that we can reference? Like, how do you dispose of them?
I don't know.
Do we care to put that in here?
Well, that my concern around that is that, okay, you know, you say, and these things have been around long enough. For example, in my old neighborhood back in Connecticut, fellow had a solar array that the collection devices were not solar. They were funny shaped looking things and real old school. And they lost their efficiency and effectiveness. And so now they're, you had 4 of these things that look like somebody cut a barrel in half and put 6 of them together, 5 of them on top of a roof. And they're just sitting there and not being used. They're an eyesore, but it's like, oh, they're there, I'm not gonna move. When I die, somebody will have to worry about it. But these panels, even the current panels, even though they have a shelf life, and it's 15 to 20 years, and so then the question is there any requirement that someone, I'm not sure what abandonment means, particularly as to how you determine that.
Not being
What it
used.
says, not being used for 6 months,
Right.
Yeah.
But I think disposal, I think.
but without written consent of the
What
municipality.
do
I think the feds have some requirements
Yeah.
on how you dispose. Because they were talking about the wind turbines in the Midwest have outlived their use and they're figuring out how to dispose of them. And they're realizing they don't, the turbines are made out of a plastic that will not ever biodegrade. They are stuck with them forever. So
Can they
they're trying to
recycle
figure-
that plastic?
Hmm?
Can they recycle that plastic?
Nope.
Melt it down? and-
They're,
Is that like my conduit?
hopefully they make giant conduits out of it for you, but no, so I mean, it's like, I think the feds have, like, where do you take, because I don't think you can take them to the transfer station.
Right.
I don't think they'll accept them
Yeah.
there, you know.
So I guess I didn't see it here in terms of what the disposal requirement is. And again, if there's something that's out there that we could reference or we
That'd be
could
good.
find,
See what you can find.
that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want them to be buried. You take them apart and bury them on their property.
Yeah.
Sounds like nuclear waste.
Yeah.
It would be, I mean.
So when you know, they build these plants and they have no way to dispose of the waste at the end of the
Yeah.
period of time,
Yeah.
and I don't know what you do. And I mean, who pays for the dismantling of these things? You know, somebody just has got this stuff in their house and they walk away, you know, looks like the taxpayers take care of it. So I don't think there's really a great answer, unfortunately.
again, I just raise it as a concern. I'm not sure we can address it, but if there's something we can do that, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, well,
Just interestingly, I was at a Washington Valley Housing Commission thing yesterday, and all these builders that are putting up these places now are employing solar panels.
They are all the time.
Yeah, which is good. You know, again, we got that same problem when you do with them, but they're looking at, you know, like this electric costs and they're talking about everybody gets $100, which is sort of stupid, but, so they're really, they're thinking ahead on this stuff.
Yeah, what's the problem with windmills?
But don't you know they cause cancer?
Uh-huh.
Ask my friend Donald Trump, he says they cause cancer.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Well, the sun,
Nothing's wrong with that.
the sun causes cancer, so
Yeah.
solar panels are.
Well, we should stop having that.
We were just sailing out by Vinyl Haven, and they have 3 windmills there. They've had them for a while, and everybody's been bitching about them. And Jerry and I kayaked up to there. You can't hear them. You can hear all the lobster boats all over the place pouring around like crazy, but you could not hear those windmills. And then, you know, you wouldn't have to deal with solar arrays and all the rest of that stuff. But nobody's thinking long about it.
I
Those
think
lines today.
Anything else we need to really look at? How about setbacks and things like that? In this document, I noted that the setbacks were addressed by saying they should be the same as any other setback requirement.
Yep.
Why not?
Well, the question is, for example, when you put a shed up, you don't have to deal with the setback requirement.
Well,
And,
maybe should,
well,
unless if it's permanent, yeah.
if you're doing a driveway, you have to deal with a setback.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
So I guess, and that's an impervious surface. So I guess the question is should it be the same? And again, I'm okay with that as long as that's what we decide we want to do.
Well, I noted in here that the height requirement is exempt for solar panels, which I thought was very interesting. And another thing I heard at this meeting yesterday is that some guy complained that he was going to get a reflection off of the solar panels and was able to prevent these people from doing it on their own roof. I mean, it's,
well, they do
Yeah,
actually.
there are references here.
Yeah.
Later, later.
so it's, you know, it's, we have a lot to learn on this stuff, I think.
Yeah, if we went through this line by line, there are provisions in here that talk about reflection. The question around the exemption for height is based on what? I didn't see that, I'm sorry.
Page 4, section 18. I numbered it only because it'll be section 18 if we ever put it in there. This is one of these.
I wonder whether it would be an extension on a windmill for height.
Well, this is saying, and I saw this somewhere else too, that if you have a height requirement of 40 feet, you're talking about the roof.
Right, so I think was it 30 feet?
Yeah, yeah, and then if the solar panel is 5 inches, the roof doesn't have to come down 5 inches.
All right, so if I want to put a 50-foot tower on my home, in order to have a solar panel, this is okay.
No, they're roof mounted, and that's always,
Yeah, but it's roof mounted.
those are flat. If you're talking about.
I'm thinking about these wonderful barrels that were sitting in my neighbor's roof that.
We can have a
that
closet
extended
that
out
says
like
no
10
barrel.
extended 10 feet up in the air.
Because they actually define what a ground mounted is, the one that you see with the pole. We put that on the roof. Roof mounted are flat. And with new technology, they're actually installing it in asphalt shingles, so you won't even see them.
Exactly, you don't even see
You
them.
won't even
They
see
are
them.
your shingles.
They're built into the shingles. The question, one of the questions I had, and that is, they reference, and I assume we would not do this. We don't do site reviews, right? Because one of the things is site plan review, we don't do that, correct?
Correct.
Sarah, can you help me out? Why don't we do site plan review? Is that part of, what is that, part of our,
Site plan review, as I understand it, is, only applies to commercial establishments and, it's just regulations on, I think, design, probably pull up Conway's site plan review to see
Yeah.
what they require, but it has, I think it has to do with style, architecture, color, setbacks, parking and all that. I think, I would refer to someone like Conway to see what it is that they do. The reason we don't have it is because a lot of opposition to it when it was brought up quite a few years ago. And we never went that way because of the groundswell of opposition.
Is that like a historical district type thing?
But
Where you gotta paint your house white?
I don't know as it gets to that kind of detail. I mean, your site plan review can have items in it, whatever you decide. It's not a set, I'm sure there's model ordinances for it. But it is a tool available to planning boards
yeah,
if
so
the
this,
town votes it in.
this does talk about site plan regulations, and says, development in this proposed location will comply with all applicable requirements of the site plan regulations,
Mhm.
not otherwise covered in this section. And if we don't have site plan regulations,
Well, then
It's
it
mute.
doesn't apply. Remember,
Yeah.
this is a one size,
Yeah.
this is
yeah,
everything.
yeah, so what I'm suggesting is we need to make sure we excise some of the,
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I left everything in because I wasn't sure what we could or not.
yeah, well, yeah, and it's still good questions to ask, and that's why I asked, what about site plan?
Yeah. And we don't have it.
We don't have it, and yet we're asking people to properly shield something from their neighbor, but who's going to review that?
We do.
But it's not a site plan?
No, site plan review ordinance regulations is a specific regulations. We review plans of sites, of plots, like we did today, subdivisions and so on. Changing, actually, it would be, if they're using an existing lot, just changing the use, I think that goes to the selectmen, doesn't come to us.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm trying to get at. Would we be seeing these things coming through? I'm displaying my ignorance here, but for most things that are going through, they end up going through the building inspector and to the selectmen for approval.
Right.
And in fact, the conditional use process that we have works through the Board of Selectmen.
Mhm.
So I guess my question would be, does this anticipate that things like making sure that something's properly shielded and all that sort of thing, do we anticipate that would be something the building inspector would look at?
I
And
think
that
so,
would
yeah.
be approved by the Board of Selectmen rather than coming through the planning board?
I think so.
But wouldn't the building inspector have to go back and look at our rules and regulations before he can make a decision?
Well,
He
yeah.
doesn't make those decisions on his own. He
Right,
has
no,
to have it in writing.
I'm saying,
He's-
I'm trying to understand the process, what kind of process would actually
Yeah.
accrue based on what we
He is
decide.
charged to make sure that they're following all the applicable regulations.
Yeah.
So building code, state regulations, et cetera.
Setbacks, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that wouldn't be in here for the solar panel stuff. I mean, we don't have anything.
That's what we would put in the ordinance if we feel there needs to be a setback.
Okay.
That's my,
Like one of the examples here is, you have to have a plan, you have to have a drawing.
Yeah.
That drawing would be, we would require, the zoning ordinance would require a drawing of the specs of what you're gonna do and how you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
The building inspector would review that drawing to make sure that it's not something that necessarily have to come through us. Is that what you're saying, Phil?
I'm trying to understand how this would work. 'Cause we're gonna be pushing something through and say, okay, this is how it would work. If I understand correctly, based on what we're proposing, we wouldn't have any conditional use permits in the way, just looking at this zoning district and varieties that we're saying we willing to allow. So there wouldn't actually be a CUP process, but it would be a regular permitting process,
Right.
a building permit process, which is how it's working now. I mean, if an installation now without our regulations still requires a permitting process.
We're just putting some parameters around.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
I don't think what we have now, I don't know that we have any setback requirements currently. And I don't think we have anything that requires that it's shielded. And I don't know whether or not we have anything, to your comment, around the glare. So if we have these, we'd have all those different things in there that Kevin would have to take a look at, make sure they apply.
Yep.
I'm kind of asking and saying at the same time.
Right.
Well, no,
Agreed.
it's glare, it's the electrical requirements, it's the noise, it's the setback, and then there's this whole section on stormwater, which you have to deal with.
For ground mount.
Right. So
Yeah.
all of that would be Kevin, the building inspectors. We would just set the parameters. Now, they do talk about, and maybe that's only because of the conditional use permit, they do talk about in here about a public hearing. The selectmen could do a public hearing if somebody questions the permit that they're going
Yeah, again, if it's not a CUP, there probably wouldn't be a need for a hearing, but I think that the select board you have the ability to request a hearing if the select board approves something and you don't agree with it.
It had to do with the abutters,
Yeah.
that if they had an issue with
Yeah.
it, a place for them to voice their concern. So the selectmen could do that public hearing.
Right now, the process is if you have an issue with something that the board of selectmen approves relative to that, you end up going to the ZBA, zoning board of adjustment.
I would guess that other towns are dealing with the same thing. And I also would guess that the state is probably putting on education courses on this type of thing, and that we should encourage Kevin to go to some of these things and see what he can find out and see what other towns are doing. I would almost bet that that's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but
This was based on the full article. This draft was done by, I want to say, Derry, New Hampshire. There is a town that imposed these rules here, but not a lot. When I Googled it, maybe it's changed in the last few months, there wasn't a lot of towns that I could find that had actually solar ordinances in place. And a lot of this is directed by the state.
right.
this is what the state wants.
I'd just like to make sure whatever process is in place fits with what we do here. And it's really is different from town to town.
Yeah,
But I definitely agree with Kevin, getting some
yeah.
knowledge.
I'm sure that, yeah.
Well, we might ask Kevin, he probably already knows, he probably
Right.
say, okay, Kevin, this is what we're looking at, any issue with any of these things that you see here, and if you've got some pointers for us to improve on it, we'd appreciate it.
You're talking about handing him this document or what we do after we've shaved off what we don't?
I think after we shave, yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, not the full beard.
Who's got a hat? Anybody got a hat?
All right, so, well, we've made good progress tonight. But let's talk about what we're going to do. Between now and our next meeting, and I guess I have a question, do we want an August meeting?
I'm here.
I won't be here. I will not be here. But do we want an August meeting? And the answer is yes, okay. And who will actually do some work on making the changes to shade this?
I suggest that everybody go through it and just, if you see something that you say is not applicable, just take your copy and put an X or make your comments on that, all of us. And then at the next meeting, you can just go through and decide what's out and what needs to be changed.
Excellent.
I agree.
Okay. Great.
Spend some time.
And it is a Word document, so you can mock up whatever you want on this document.
Okay.
Well, we got paper copies here. if you want.
The only other thing I wanted to mention before we head out, I don't have any short-term rentals tonight, is that the Facilities Committee is meeting regularly, has met three times now. Sarah's been, David's been, Dick's been, but not everybody's been to all of them. I think I've been to each of them. What I wanted to mention is that we have good representation from the board, so thank you for you guys showing up. But the other is that I think that, if I understand correctly, we are likely going to need to work towards actually doing a more formal process for the planning board as a result of what the Facilities Committee is actually doing. And if that's the case, I don't expect they're going to get anything done earlier than, town meeting next year. So maybe just put a kind of a pin in it for, I think next year we're going to have to address more formally the results of that process. Make that.
When do these meetings occur?
They have been occurring once a month and.
At the end of the month.
Pardon?
At the end of the month.
Yeah, next one is July 25th.
Last one, next one's July something or
And
other.
where they held?
Right here, yeah.
He records them, so
Yeah.
they're on Flicks if you want. That's where I watched the last ones. He puts it on
Okay.
JFlix if you want.
But I don't know, I have mixed feelings about how that really relates to our more formal requirements as a planning board to do our work.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where the Facilities Committee is headed. The way it was originally spoken, it sounded like it was just doing a capital improvements plan. But apparently they want to do more than that. They want to have public hearings or public gatherings to get people's opinions about townspeople. What do people want for Jackson? What do they see.
Well, that's a good idea.
I think, no, it's all great.
Yeah.
But
And,
I'm not sure if their end result is going to be a true capital improvement program.
right,
And that's my concern, is
Yeah.
that we have a requirement to do that. And,
we have the ability to do it if the selectmen want us to.
right,
We do it for the selectmen, we aren't required to do it.
so then the question is, you know, does that end up being a result of the facilities committee process?
Could be.
Or will they actually get to a place where it's actually a capital improvement program and they're free of having to do the work?
That's it.
Well, it's early days.
Yep.
So it's hard to determine that, but I guess I just would like to put a bug in everybody's ear to think about the fact we might be doing one of those for next year. That's it.
Because I'm putting together a survey based on their last meeting
Yes.
for Jen.
You're the professional, survey
Yes,
professional.
my guys have put it together, so I'm going to be sending it to Jen for her sign off. And it really is more of a, why do you love Jackson
It's
survey?
a touchy feeling.
Why-
What percentage of Jackson homeowners are Jackson residents?
About 45%?
Right.
Is it that high?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But this survey will go to every taxpayer,
Yeah, but
regardless if they live here or not.
there's likely to be a bicameral sort of result. Some people want certain things in Jackson.
Right, that question as to whether you're a full-time resident or not is part of the survey.
Yeah,
Part of the survey.
So you can pull that
Part of understanding.
data.
yeah, I would expect there'd be quite a difference.
Find out.
Well, yeah, you don't have to worry so much about a school if you don't have kids
Right,
program, but,
And you're probably not involved in the community.
yeah, right,
but you may want to care about whether or not you have a fire engine come to your house.
yeah.
It's burned.
Recreational services, trails, things to do.
Views,
Hmm?
viewpoints. I don't want any big solar panels on, that I look out of my big picture window at.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah,
All right. Anyway. Nobody's wearing a hat, so, do I have a motion to?
I'll have a I'll make a
I have a
motion.
motion to adjourn,
To
second?
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please? Yes.
Thank you.
so if you buy a house in Jackson,
See you, Hank.
And